So transformational change is possible, but you also need the evidence that it's really happening. And what is really nice is that CIF has decided to put together 2 reports on transformational change that they launch here today. So it's not just a film launching, it's also a report launching. We are at least part of the UN system, aren't we? So reports. These reports will be available outside. You can actually pick them up about transformational change. They're also available on the web. But to tell us a little bit more about them, I would like to invite Ms. Mafalda Duarte, again, head of CIF, to come up and give us sort of a kickstart of the reports, what they contain, and also help us maybe to frame a little bit the panel discussion that we will have directly after. So please, a warm applause for Mafalda once she enters the stage.
Okay, let's now talk about transformational change. We are very proud to have been able, over the past almost 2 years, to go through this process of bringing together quite a number of people, bringing a couple of institutions with track record on evaluation work, to look at the CIF portfolio projects and try to assess what has been the transformational impact and why. So as Johan was saying, we have commissioned 2 independent evaluation studies that have looked at this CIF's role in supporting transformational change, and I will be providing some highlights of those. These are very comprehensive reports, as you might expect. I'm going to keep it to the key messages. There will be sessions dedicated to enter into more details in the main areas that we work on, which is energy transition, energy access, climate resilience, and sustainable forest management. But first, I would like to thank the authors of these reports. I see some of them over there. They will be also speaking in more detail about their work, their findings in the breakout sessions. And I also would like to thank the many of you who were engaged in this process over the past, as I said, almost 2 years. Let's frame it again. I started off and framed it in the beginning in my welcoming remarks, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. In 2008, the CIF were established because people believed that business as usual, the models that we had at the time were not going to get us where we needed to go. So we needed to pilot, experiment with a new business model. And from the beginning, the intent was to reach something more than a project-by-project approach would. The first thing that was done throughout this process of the independent evaluations and the learning partnership that was associated with it was to actually talk about this concept, transformational change. What does it mean? How can we frame this? The issue is that, people like me, people like many of you who have been working in the CIF for many years and who are, we collectively working hard to make these projects, these programs deliver on its results and its ambition, we were seeing transformation. And we were interpreting transformation in our own way. The question now here, with the rigor of the evaluation community and others, is how can we frame this? How do we frame it in a way that is easily understood and can be easily applied going forward? So they looked at these 4 dimensions. So first of all, as you will see in the reports, when we talk about transformational change, we are not talking about a change here and a change there. We are talking about systems-wide changes, because that's precisely what we need to attain our climate goals. It's systems-wide changes. what we have in front of us, what we have to do is actually quite challenging, because our societies and our economies are operating under a paradigm that has been established and is now underpinning everything we do for many decades. We need to shift that paradigm. So it is about systems-wide changes and not, as I said, a project by project. So the teams came up with these 4 dimensions. Relevance. So what is relevance? The focus. What is the focus of the investments? Is it a strategic, transformative focus? Is it aligned with the national strategies and policies and ambitions? Second, systemic change. Again, what we are talking about here is fundamental shifts in system structures and functions. Third, scale. When we talk about scale in this conceptual framework of transformational change, we are talking about large-scale impacts that go beyond the projects themselves, so that we see lasting change after the projects have been implemented, which is also linked to this 4th dimension, which is sustainability. Are we doing something that will have a long-lasting nature? One example in the way to look at this is, are we applying concessional finance with a view to allow these investments to move forward and scale up without concessional finance? The report also found that there are 5 key elements that have helped CIF drive this transformational change. Many of you will recognize this. We have been talking about this here and there. We have been mentioning these things. The question here was, again, how do we structure this into a narrative that might be more easily understood? 5 core elements. This is very important, because this is what explains the uniqueness of the CIF business model, and this is what explains the transformational results that we have seen. I will speak about some of them. John alluded to some in the morning as well, and you'll have a chance to look at them in more detail in the reports. First, a country-led programmatic approach. A country-led programmatic approach. It is about empowering the government to convene all the relevant stakeholders from the government themselves, but from private sector, from civil society, the multilateral development banks, into a dialogue about what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that the country is faced with, and how can we maximize these resources to catalyze a different type of change and reach a new level of results and different types of results. 2, explicit consideration of transformational change at the design phase, and bringing together these comprehensive and strategic investment plans that help move barriers and achieve transformation. So it is thinking about, from the outset, when we are designing what we call in our context investment plans or strategic programs for climate resilience, how can we attain transformation, or how can we start catalyzing transformation? How do we start a new path? How do we put the country in a new path? 3, large and very large investments that have utilized a range of concessional financing tools, grants, loans, others as well. And this has provided not just the incentives to the governments and to the private sector and to the multilateral development banks, but actually scale is necessary to de-risk and bring capital costs down, as is the example here in Morocco. 4, the delivery of finance through multiple coordinated interventions from the multilateral development banks. working together, many times for the first time. Certainly for the first time as a comprehensive investment plan helping the country achieve some specific goals. We cannot forget the CIF business model is a common funding platform for the MDBs, and the objective is bringing them together into a dialogue with the governments, private sector, civil society, into a coherent set of, an agreement into a coherent set of interventions and alignment of the expertise and the resources to make it happen. Fifth element, flexible, predictable funding. So this, I'm making a pause here because, you know, these things are quite important. Predictability in this context made a lot of parties comfortable to take risks, to innovate, that they would probably not otherwise have felt comfortable with. They had the time, they knew that their resources would come, that they would come with a specific scale, that they would come with a level of flexibility, so that if there was a need to course adjust, that's what would be done. So I would like you to keep these 5 elements, which, as I said, we had been talking about for several years, we have brought together now into this more structured narrative. So let's now look at the findings. Let me now walk you through some of the key findings and some examples that make it easier to understand what we are talking about. What the independent evaluations have found is that in all of our programs, as I said, we have 4 programs that are targeted towards these areas: energy transition, energy access, climate resilience, and sustainable forests. The independent evaluations have found that in all of these areas, there are signals of transformation. We have advanced signals of transformation in terms of relevance, which means that in everything we have done, the focus has been strategically on transformation. And in the other areas of systemic change, scale, and sustainability, we observe either early signals or interim signals. In terms of systemic change, we also see very advanced signals of transformation in our energy transition and climate resilience work. Now, let me say that this doesn't mean that some of our programs in some countries, in some of these areas, don't achieve all of these dimensions. They do. But here is an analysis of the entire portfolio. So let's talk about clean energy transition. For those of you who are familiar with the CIF acronyms of programs, here we are talking about CTF. This is the Clean Technology Fund. So what have the studies found? That the CIF approach has contributed to transformational change across all 4 dimensions. So actually in CTF, what we observe is advanced signals of transformation in all of the 4 dimensions: relevant, systemic change, scale, and sustainability. And how? Key to this, strategic timing to take advantage of windows of opportunity to demonstrate the viability of the bold clean energy technologies. Mr. Bakuri mentioned it this morning as well. 2, scale of financing. Our average investment is of $50 million, which as of 2017 was 7 times higher than the average project of other multilateral climate funds. And scale is important. I've explained why it is important before. 3, promoting innovative and first-of-a-kind projects in several countries that then became global and regional leaders. Morocco, Mexico, Turkey, Thailand, several examples in the portfolio. Another key area, working closely with private sector to drive down risk perception, lower costs, and attract those levels of investment from private sector that we want to see. Let me use Morocco as an example. There are better people in the room to talk about this, Mr. Bakouri for sure, and many others, but I'll try to do justice to the amazing results that we have achieved here. So CTF, the CIF, as Mr. Bakouri also said in the morning, prior to 2010, Morocco had no significant investments in concentrated solar power or CSP. We, alongside others, invested, CTF itself invested around 500 million in this complex that you have seen. And what did this do? It helped reduce project costs along with the other finances that came along. So in the first phase of this complex, the costs were reduced by 25% compared to the finance that would have been available from commercial banks. And in phases 2 and 3, that reduction was of 10%. This is important because this is helping make the power tariffs more affordable than they would be otherwise. This has enabled the government to bring a large number of investors on board. Mr. Bakouri also mentioned them this morning. Of course, the multilateral development banks, KfW, AFD, EIB, and others. This helped change perceptions of risk towards investing in this technology. Paddy from Aqua Power, are you here? There he is. This is also support learning by Aqua Power. They have been conveying to us and many others that through this work here in this Noor solar complex, they learned in the areas of procurement, supply chain management, engineering design, and plant optimization. And this has helped them in 2017 to be contracted to provide 700 megawatt CSP plant in Dubai, which set a global benchmark for CSP costs. So the results are then not just here, and this is why we are talking about transformation. We see transformation here in Morocco, but we see it in the whole CSP market globally. And Morocco is now a global leader in renewable energy development and successfully attracting foreign investment in the sector. I'm not going to talk about the wind program that we are also supporting here in Morocco, where we are seeing equivalent results. John mentioned, oh, now this jumped. Okay. John mentioned Mexico. So I'm going to mention it again very briefly. It's another very successful program that we have in CTF, Mexico wind markets. In 2009 and 10, IFC, IDB, alongside us, invested in 2 private wind energy projects, which were considered critical to advance this fledgling market right when it needed it most. Remember, 2008, CIF were established. 2009, we were, alongside IDB and IFC, providing resources in Mexico to wind power projects. That was the time when investors were reluctant to invest in renewable energy and when capital flows to emerging markets were actually reducing. So this led to a third investment in 2011 to establish a renewable energy financing facility by IDB, which in turn supported 6 wind energy projects from 2012 to 2016. This also enabled testing of energy policy reforms through these investments, and that has enabled further rapid scaling of wind energy projects. And the sector now took off on its own. New wind projects received $11.8 billion worth of investments from 2011 to 2017, mostly from private investment. And today, There are 4.3 gigawatts of new wind capacity commissioned without concessional finance. So here's an example of a program where actually we achieved all of the dimensions of transformation. Let me turn to energy access. What the studies have found is that we have contributed to transformation in this area, and let us bear in mind that our portfolio here is much less advanced than our energy transition portfolio, so we hope to continue to learn and share that learning going forward. But the transformation we have seen and observed is mostly because of two things. One, delivery of first-time demonstration projects, and I will be giving an example from Kenya next, and the strengthening of the enabling environment. Policy reform, strengthening institutions, advancing new knowledge. I was working in this portfolio at the African Development Bank several years ago, and I remember going to countries like Mali, or going to Ethiopia, or going to Tanzania, and actually seeing that there was not much happening in terms of renewable energy. There was a lot to be done in terms of helping the governments think through about the policy reforms and the institutions, and building that capability and that foundational regulatory frameworks, those regulatory frameworks. So let me give you the example of Kenya. Is Kenya here? I saw Erastus this morning, but very good. Everything I'm going to say, I know that I have the real actors in the room. So Kenya, of course, energy access or improved access to affordable energy is a top priority of the government. According to the latest numbers that I have seen, there's still around 45% of Kenyans that do not have access to basic energy services. At the same time, Kenya has an estimated geothermal potential of nearly 7,000 megawatts. And when we were working with the government in Kenya, back in 2014, the installed geothermal capacity was of 240 megawatts only. So what we did was to support Kenya's new geothermal development corporation in its major project by tackling what you have also seen in the documentary, the early stage exploratory and drilling risks, so that the private sector can then come in and invest in the generation phase. We have also supported the first public-private partnership in the geothermal sector in Kenya. Now, these models are being replicated in 3 other plants under construction, and there is much wider scaling potential in Kenya and in the region. Resilience. This is our second most mature portfolio after transition, energy transition, our resilience portfolio. This is when we are talking about the pilot program for climate resilience. And here we have seen, or the teams have observed, transformational impact, advanced transformational impact in terms of relevance and systemic change, and interim or early signals in terms of scale and sustainability. How have we supported transformational change in climate resilience? Basically through 2 main ways. One is creating the strong incentives for climate resilience mainstreaming and strengthening of national adaptation strategies. This through technical assistance to improve knowledge systems, but then again also through direct investments in resilience. Again, we have Niger here, where we have a very successful program thanks to all of the efforts of the government. We have Zambia, we have Mozambique. These are shining examples of what I'm talking about. The approach of the CIF, the business model of the CIF, was of working as partners with the countries and tailor the design of a strategic program for climate resilience to their own needs, to where the institutions were, to the pace that it was required for them to bring all of the relevant stakeholders together and come to an agreement about what a mainstreaming agenda should look like and how they were going to implement it. And then, after that, pilot investments that could then be replicated by the governments themselves or through other funding sources as well. The second main way was through attracting private and public finance, including, of course, from the MDBs, donors, and private investors. Zambia, you have heard it in the documentary as well. You will hear it from the representatives here. The minister, the honorable minister is here. Other colleagues are here as well. What has happened in Zambia is through the CIF support, working, of course, under the leadership of the government with all of the partners, climate was mainstreamed, climate change was mainstreamed in the 6th National Development Plan and in several sector strategies: agriculture, natural resources, transport, energy, housing, and more. What has this turned into? Even in addition to this, government ministries were required to allocate budgetary resources to climate resilience programs, and this carried forward to the next National Development Plan and supported also the 2016 National Policy on Climate Change. Forests. This is a program that is one of our most nascent, let's not say nascent, but is one of the less mature portfolios. It is also a sector that we know is a very complex sector. Nevertheless, the studies found that the CIF's model was highly relevant to transformational change because it has provided integrated solutions in this very difficult and slow-moving sector. I hope if you're interested in this topic that you go to the specific session on forestry and you can learn a lot more. I've said it many times, I had not worked in the forestry sector before my engagements with the CIF and was always amazed at how much complexity in delivering results one can have. And I think forestry really illustrates or exemplifies that. What the CIF business model has done is helped country actors to align around this common vision of what are the causes, the drivers of deforestation or forest degradation, and how do we go about tackling them in an integrated way. The other way that the teams have found transformational impact is through policy reforms. They have observed several policy reforms and new commitments to forest protection and the testing of new business models, which are very promising. Let me share the example of Mexico, which is again an example, as I said, where we actually observe all areas of transformational impact in the program. Mexico, is the Mexico team here? Mexico has done an extraordinary work in the forestry sector over many years. We were actually privileged and honored to be a partner and help you even achieve more. So part of what we have done, IDB and World Bank, is help provide access to finance to small and community forest enterprises and demonstrate that these investments can be financially viable. This model has been so successful that the area, the forest area and the sustainable management in the areas where the program is operating has increased to 9.4 million hectares, and we have over 265,000 people that have benefited, including women and indigenous people. And let me leave you with this final metric, with a reported $7 million increase in income in 2016 alone. So let me now run quickly through the other key findings. Gender, a very important area of focus for us, and of course for all of you. The studies have found that mainstreaming of gender considerations has improved over time in our focus of advancing women's voice, skills, and livelihoods. An example from Tajikistan, a highly vulnerable country to climate change, where migration leaves behind large numbers of households managed by women. One of our projects is increasing women's access to microcredit for climate-resilient activities, improving access to water for irrigation and drinking, and driving climate-smart agriculture, and changing the lives of these households and women. Now let's talk about the impact on the multilateral development banks themselves. This was one of the key strategic objectives when the CIFs were established, was to help the MDBs themselves get more familiar with these type of investments, mainstream them, scale up their engagement. How have we supported them? Basically through three main ways. One, building their own awareness, and this is a learning by doing process. Two, testing new concepts and developing new products. Examples, IDB's NDC Invest platform, or EBRD's lines of credit for climate resilience and energy efficiency. And third, pursuing riskier projects. We've talked about geothermal, and we've explained that. So fundamentally, over the past 10 years, we have helped the MDBs demonstrate that climate change can be a viable part of their core business, and it has become, and now they have continued to set up more and more ambitious targets and meeting them. So as we know, the multilateral climate finance architecture contains several funds. What the reports have found is that the CIF's design is unique among these climate funds, with programs that support transformational change. So I encourage you, I was very brief, I just focused on the key highlights. Again, I encourage you all to go to the sector-specific sessions to learn more. To conclude, we have spoken a lot about numbers, quantities, programs, and amazing developments. We know that what is truly important is people. It's impacting people's lives. That's also why we've made our documentary quite a lot about people. Impacts on people, impacts on institutions, impacts on sectors, impacts on countries. So with this in mind, I am looking forward to the enlightening conversations that we will have, and the one that is about to start from our esteemed panelists. I hope, and I'm very convinced that these dialogues today, tomorrow, future dialogues will really be helping us make this extra effort necessary to convince one more person, one more leader from government, from private sector, from civil society, that the future that we can, that the only future we can hope for is one where we partner and we give all we have to head in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mafalda, for providing the oversight of these two reports. As we heard, we have an opportunity to dwell into them in specific sector or in specific side events and special sessions during the 2 days and get more information and meet, of course, the experts behind it as well. I'm going to ask my final panel now to join me here, and I will introduce you as you come up. That's how it is to be a minister, always surprises.
Do you speak in Arabic?
That would be a surprise. Unfortunately.
Do you speak in Moroccan English?
I try my best. So we have Honorable Minister Aziz Rabah, the Minister of Energy, Mines and Sustainable Development from Morocco. Honorable Aishatou Boulame Kane from the Ministry of Planning, Niger. Honorable Alexander Shitame, the Minister of National Development Planning in Zambia. We have Ms. Marie-Françoise Marie-Nayi, World Bank Country Director for the Maghreb and Malta, Middle East and North Africa, and Ms. Kate Hughes, Director for International Climate and Energy, UK Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. That was a quick introduction. Time is short and people are waiting for lunch, but this has been an extraordinary morning, no doubt. We heard also now about these two reports, Transformational Change reports. A first reaction from each of you. Do you recognize the key points that these reports are presenting? And can you give some experience from your own countries or organizations how these kind of impacts have played out? So please, Minister, if I can start with you.
Très brièvement, moi, je crois que les pays en voie de développement ont intérêt à mieux négocier les partenariats. Donc, je crois, pendant 10 ans de travail, on a bien négocié, on a choisi nos partenaires, des institutions financières qui ont bien travaillé avec notre pays, mais bien sûr des développeurs aujourd'hui qui aujourd'hui, ils ont dans leur CV, le Maroc est bien visible. Moi, je crois que lorsqu'on a négocié, on n'a pas uniquement négocié la technologie, mais on a négocié, si vous voulez, le package dans sa globalité. Et c'est ça qui fait le succès de certaines expériences dans ces différents pays qu'on vient de voir, mais en particulier dans notre pays, c'est qu'on a négocié le package, donc le financement, la technologie, les partenaires, et bien sûr, on a négocié à la fin le produit final qui doit être utilisé par l'Office de l'électricité, l'Office national de l'électricité. Donc ça, c'est un point qui est très important. Mais on n'a pas oublié, bien sûr, l'objectif au départ, c'était de contrôler, ou disons de maîtriser notre énergie ou notre développement. Mais bien sûr, on n'a pas oublié d'autres aspects. Donc le premier, ça a été dans le package, c'est l'impact sur l'environnement, sur le développement local. Il faut que la population s'approprie ces différents projets. Ça, c'est un point qui est très important et qui, à mon avis, ça, c'est un élément pour les pays africains, un élément auquel il faut accorder une importance particulière parce qu'on investit beaucoup dans des grands projets, comme les projets de transition énergétique, comme les projets, si vous voulez, de développement durable dans d'autres domaines, dans l'agriculture. Mais il faut que les communautés, si vous voulez, locales en bénéficient. Et ça, c'est un élément très important. D'ailleurs, le débat aujourd'hui à l'échelle internationale, c'est comment créer le trust, la confiance entre les grands projets de développement, et surtout dans ce domaine, et les populations locales. S'il n'y a pas cette confiance, à travers l'appropriation, à travers des projets de développement local, je crois que le gap va être énorme, le conflit se développera, et par la suite, peut-être il y aura des impacts néfastes sur ces différents projets. Ça, c'est un élément très important, et peut-être vous avez les chiffres à travers Mazen, quelles sont les différentes initiatives et les projets auxquels ont bénéficié donc les populations locales. Deuxième élément qui me paraît très important, c'est que on ne s'est pas limité à l'acquisition de la technologie, mais on a négocié aussi la recherche et le développement. C'est un point très important. Nous voulons à ce que notre pays soit visible dans le radar international dans ce domaine de climat, d'une manière globale, transition énergie, climat particulière, mais nous voulons aussi à ce que notre pays soit un des éléments de ce réseau mondial de recherche et développement. Et je crois que le développement durable, tout ce qui est l'économie du climat, entre parenthèses, l'économie verte, transition énergétique, permettent aux pays africains de développer une véritable plateforme de développement et de recherche. Troisième élément dans ce package, c'est qu'on a bien négocié, si vous voulez, entre parenthèses, local content. Ça veut dire comment peut-on, à travers ces grands projets de dizaines de milliards de dirhams, D'ici 2030, on est en train de parler de 40 milliards de dollars d'investissement. Comment peut-on avoir une industrie locale qui sera faite par des entreprises marocaines, mais aussi par des entreprises internationales qui décident de s'installer au Maroc? Et déjà, on commence à voir des usines, des panneaux solaires, des composantes éoliennes, mais nous voulons aller vers ce qu'on appelle les composantes intelligentes de cette transition, et que pas uniquement l'aspect, si vous voulez, aluminium, acier, mais aller vers même des aspects électroniques où il y a un peu d'intelligence. Moi, je crois que c'est un très bon deal entre les institutions de financement, ces différents programmes, et les choix au niveau local pour en faire une véritable économie, pas uniquement, disons, production d'électricité, mais une économie, disons, complète.
Thank you very much, Minister Rabat. I think, I mean, you really make the strong case, exactly the case that also Mafalda makes. You have to see this very comprehensively. It's not just about investment in the energy sector. It's much wider than that. It's actually building a society in many ways. And thank you for giving these very three clear points. Minister Kane, is this also something you recognize, or from the perspective of Niger, what can you add in terms of the conclusions that also these reports present in terms of transformational change? It's just to speak.
Merci beaucoup. Je dois commencer mon intervention par là où Mafalda a terminé. Tout ce que nous faisons, que nous soyons au niveau du ministère du Plan, que nous soyons au ministère de l'Environnement, que nous soyons au niveau local, que nous soyons au niveau régional, au niveau mondial, la Banque mondiale ou la BAD, c'est pour transformer la vie quotidienne d'êtres humains. Et dans le cas précis, en matière de climat, quand nous disons vulnérabilité, c'est des drames humains quotidiens dont il s'agit. Et les changements transformationnels visent à créer les conditions pour que les populations, donc les personnes, les individus qui sont concernés par ces drames puissent voir leur vie changer par un mieux-être, par un meilleur être et un bien-être. Et au Niger, l'expérience que nous avons eue avec CIF, à travers un programme que nous avons appelé un programme, disons, stratégique pour le développement de la résilience, a été réalisé à travers 4 sous-programmes. Deux sous-programmes financés par, je dirais, le groupe Banque mondiale, donc la Banque mondiale elle-même et la SCFI, et 2 sous-programmes financés par la BAD, la Banque africaine de développement. Alors, à travers la mise en œuvre de ces programmes, nous avons atteint des résultats, et des résultats non seulement sur le plan stratégique, mais aussi des résultats, je dirais, à dimension humaine, dans le changement de la vie des gens au quotidien. Sur le plan stratégique, nous avons, à travers ces programmes, je dirais, acclimaté toutes nos stratégies et les programmes aussi. Que ce soit au niveau local, les conseils communaux ont adapté leur plan de développement local au climat. Que ce soit au niveau régional et que ce soit au niveau national, c'est-à-dire nos plans de développement économique et social, tout à l'heure le ministre de l'Environnement l'a dit, nous avons acclimaté au point où le dernier PDS que nous avons adopté fait de cette question du changement climatique un axe stratégique spécifique. Ça, c'est sur le plan stratégique. Sur le plan maintenant des résultats au point de vue des actions concrètes qui ont été menées sur le terrain, nous avons Je peux vous donner plusieurs exemples, si le temps le permet. Sur le plan socio-économique, nous avons amélioré la vie de 2 180 000 personnes, dont 49% de femmes. C'est-à-dire l'équilibre du genre là est respecté dès le départ. Nous pouvons vous citer beaucoup d'exemples de comment les gens ont vu leur vie changer à travers, parce que c'est 2 180 000, je dirais, exemples, comme celui du Ghana, monsieur du Ghana, comme une Nigérienne, donc une femme qui a créé une entreprise pour cultiver le moringa, qui en plus du fait que c'est une entreprise à travers laquelle elle gagne sa vie, mais c'est une entreprise aussi qui a un apport nutritionnel pour la société, parce que le moringa, tout le monde connaît les vertus du moringa. Nous avons aussi accru les rendements de la production, parce que chez nous, le problème se pose en ces termes. Et au point où je peux vous dire que sur le plan agricole, les rendements de la production sont accrus de 105%. Sur le plan pastoral, le Niger est un pays pastoral, nous avons accru les rendements de 38%. Comment? Par exemple, sur le plan agricole, nous avons développé, donc dans le cadre de ces programmes, des semences résilientes. Vous savez, avec les changements climatiques, les saisons de pluie chez nous se font de plus en plus courtes. Donc, il faut trouver des semences qui soient adaptées à ces changements climatiques. Ces semences résilientes, il faut bien sûr les promouvoir auprès des paysans. On connaît, les paysans, ils croient à ce qu'ils voient. Et je pense qu'ils ont vu la nécessité d'adapter ces semences résilientes. La preuve en est que nous avons accru le rendement. Les techniques d'irrigation aussi sont importantes. Donc, comment adapter des techniques d'irrigation qui vont permettre aux paysans d'augmenter leur rendement. Ensuite, la vulgarisation des produits agroclimatiques. Là, c'est une question qui, moi-même, puisque moi je suis dans le domaine du développement, mais quand j'ai été édifié sur la façon dont les paysans se sont appropriés ces produits agroclimatiques, la météo, la pluviométrie, etc., comment il faut s'adapter à tout cela, je pense que c'est un résultat important. Il y a également les bonnes pratiques pour la gestion durable des terres et des eaux. Je pense que je ne vais pas m'attarder là-dessus, mais il y a aussi l'émergence du réseau et des plateformes multi-acteurs sur les questions du changement climatique. C'est très important parce que ça fait bouger la société. Ça fait bouger la société globalement, dans son ensemble, pour aller vers plus de résilience. Sur le plan de l'environnement, 60% de nos producteurs des zones concernées par le programme sont adoptés des pratiques, je dirais, pour améliorer les gestions durables des terres et de l'eau. En gros, ce que je dois dire, ce que dit le ministre marocain est vrai, mais l'intervention que nous avons eue du CIF à travers tous ces programmes, c'est particulièrement le programme pilote pour la résilience climatique. Et à travers ces programmes, malgré tout, nous avons appréhendé les questions qui relèvent de l'énergie, qui relèvent de la nécessité de l'innovation dans le domaine de l'énergie ou dans d'autres domaines, parce que je pense que l'innovation, il ne faut pas l'avoir seulement, et ça c'est peut-être dans la seconde partie que je vais le dire, il ne faut pas l'avoir seulement dans le domaine énergétique. Il s'agit d'accélérer le développement. Il s'agit de sortir des millions de personnes de la pauvreté. Aujourd'hui, nous, au Niger, nous avons 45%, bon, un peu moins puisque nous sommes à la deuxième année, de taux de pauvreté. Nous voulons atteindre 31%. Nous ne pouvons pas le faire, c'est vrai, sans énergie. Mais nous ne pouvons pas aussi sans les nouvelles technologies de l'information. Je pense qu'il faut lier les deux. Il faut lier les deux. Quand on parle de village intelligent, c'est un tout. Il y a l'énergie, mais il y a aussi les nouvelles technologies de l'information. Donc, l'innovation dans les villages de manière générale. Je voudrais vous dire une anecdote. J'ai bien suivi le premier panel. J'ai bien suivi le rapport sur les changements transformationnels. dans les années 80, on regardait la télévision avec ma fille. Et puis, elle avait 10 ans. Et puis, on fait un reportage sur nos pays. C'est-à-dire, c'était l'époque des sécheresses où on montrait des choses terribles, des images terribles. Et j'étais là avec ma fille qui avait 10 ans. Elle me dit, mais maman, celui qui filme là, il ne peut pas aider les gens qu'il filme. C'est-à-dire, pour elle, c'est des gens qui ont faim, il faut les aider à ne plus avoir faim. Je lui ai dit, j'ai vraiment eu du mal à lui répondre. Mais je lui ai dit, le fait de les filmer, c'est déjà les aider. C'est déjà provoquer les conditions. Bon, là, elle ne peut pas comprendre ça, mais c'est ce que je lui ai dit. Je me suis arrêtée à ce qu'elle peut comprendre. Mais chaque fois qu'il y a ce genre de questions qui se présentent ici, je me dis, le fait de prendre en compte la dimension humaine, le drame humain, le drame individuel que les gens vivent dans ces différents pays touchés par ces changements climatiques, c'est quelque chose d'important qu'il faut nécessairement envisager dans le cadre de toutes les questions qui ont été abordées depuis ce matin. Quand on dit 1,5 degré là, il ne faut pas voir 1,5 degré juste parce que c'est des chercheurs, des machins qui en parlent, mais il faut voir 1,5 degré, quel est l'impact sur le citoyen qui vit le drame. Merci.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for bringing in that very strong human dimension, really. If I can move now to Minister Chiteme, we also saw examples from Zambia in the film. What are your perspectives in terms of the Transformational Change report and some of the key recommendations, or key outcomes rather, that Mafalda was presenting, and how relevant is that also for Zambia?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, the way I understand it is that we've got objectives from the report. And I should be proud from Zambia. I think we've achieved most, if not all, the objectives in that report. I'll begin with the way the government has managed to decentralize all these objectives of climate change from the national level to the very sub-national level to us, which means in our constituencies, in our wards. And we see that there's the human involvement, the individual person that is involved, that is making us, or our people, or our plans to be understood at the very bottom, so that those barriers at the bottom are broken down before we even come to make our national plans. Secondly, we looked at, as the chairman mentioned earlier before, we have mainstreamed our climate change policies, our ideas, our plans, into, first of all, our 6th National Development Plan, and going into our 7th National Development Plan. We made sure that we maintain not only the objective of CIF, but also the SDGs. We have mainstreamed up to 86% of SDGs, including SDG number 7. So, which makes it very, very easy for us to make sure that our CIF, the climate change objectives are sieved through our national plans. We've also done our budget targeting, where we budget tracking, where we are tracking what resources we are putting into our budget, into our plans that are going to be seen through, and how much resources are being used and where they're being used. That has been done on a multi-secretarial approach, whereby we are not focusing on one ministry, which is the Ministry of Planning, or the Ministry of Environment, or the Ministry of Agriculture, but it's done from the central ministry, which is the Ministry of Planning, where all these things are being understood across the board. I also want to come back to the issue of private sector investment into the whole system. What I want to say about that is that for us, maybe that has been the only problem that we've got, because we haven't really managed to get private sector involvement into climate change, or buying into the climate change. Like was said before, we've got, let's say, a plan. And the plan is supposed to be financed both by the private sector and the public sector. Well, we've gone in as a public sector in terms of government, but then we are also trying to attract the private sector to come into and buy into our plans that mainstream climate change. The problem is that most of the private sector players are looking at return rather than impact. So we are looking at ways where we can streamline and get a win-win situation where we can have investment in terms of people coming to invest and they get the return, but also our people and the government get the impact that they need to come into the sectors, to come into and speak to climate change. That is where our only problem is. But otherwise, we have mainstreamed most of the climate change policies in our plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also for bringing up the issue of return. You can say short-term investment versus long-term investments as well. And I think all three ministers very much confirm the outcomes of the report and the key messages there. The fact that you really need to see this from a systematic approach. Climate finance, yes. Energy finance, yes. But it has to be brought into a development perspective very clearly, where people are in the center.
Yeah, maybe just to amplify on that. And I'll give an example of a project that has been done under PPCR in Western Province of Zambia. It was a great project. It was successful, and it was seen that it can be scaled up. And when the World Bank saw that, they gave us not only a loan, they gave us a grant up to the tune of $14 million, just to make sure that the impact is felt and that we needed to scale up that project. So we're looking at investments that can come in, not only for return, but also for impact. Because when we look at the effects of climate change, they are not only being felt in the poor Africa, no, but this is a global thing. And the only place where you can do your mitigation is in Africa, because the rest of the world is concreted. There's concrete all over. You cannot grow trees. You cannot do anything. But it's the African continent that is bringing in mitigation.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing up that also very positive message, the possibilities. If I can turn to you, Marie-Françoise, we also heard about the impact that concessional climate finance from CIF, for instance, can have on development finance institutions as well. From that development finance perspective, what do you think that the lessons that we learn now from CIF mean for you as institutions, and how can you then sort of maximize impact the resources that you have also with scarce public resources? What is it that you can do? What is the lessons learned here?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased to be here to celebrate the 10 years of the CIF, because 10 years ago, I was the country director for DRC, for the two Congos actually, and today I'm country director for Morocco, so it's really the road from the Congo River to the north of Sahara. First of all, I'd like to reinforce the point that the two ministers, and Mafalda made on the impact on the people. Not only in terms of beneficiaries, but also for them to participate in the process. And I'll come on that when I will talk a little bit of my experience in DRC. I would say that clearly there are three elements. Obviously, everything resonates very well with me. There are three elements that I'm taking away. The first is really how the CIF has been a flexible mechanism to allow us to mobilize funding for really climate action, and how it has pushed us, all institutions, I think that it was really mentioned earlier, to go beyond and push ourselves up. So that is the first element. The second is indeed the coordinating approach, both among MDBs, but also on the government side. And the third element that I think that I would like to stress is having a champion. Who is driving that? So on the first part, of course, Morocco has been amply presented by the minister, by Mafalda, but being here and feeling it on the day-to-day, I want to reinforce it once more. And I think that what was interesting is that, as Mafalda mentioned, with 500 million of CIF, how we were able to mobilize the MDBs. My colleague Adama is there from ADB, but also the private sector. And what was interesting as part of that is that how we came up with simplified and harmonized procurement procedures to accelerate the process. So I think that that is a very interesting takeaway. The second is how indeed we are moving toward a more integrated approach to development. And Morocco has actually developed a sustainable development strategy that we are coming to support, and that goes beyond energy. There is an important nexus here in Morocco between water and energy, something that we are now looking at very closely, because Morocco is becoming a very water-scarce country, and we clearly see the connection between the two. But also in climate-smart agriculture, Morocco is leading in terms of adaptation with the initiative of the adaptation of African agriculture, actually that was launched last week here. So it's important to see how all these elements are coming together. In a couple of weeks, I will be in Washington presenting the new strategy of the World Bank for Morocco, and it's actually based on that, and we have a strong element of resilience throughout the strategy. Let me say a few words on my experience in DRC, and I think that my former partners, counterparts are in the room. I believe I saw them this morning. First of all, relating to the issue of champion, there was a Minister of Environment in 2008, and by the way, I also forgot to mention that in 2008, it was before Copenhagen, so we have come a long way. I believe, up to COP21 and 22 here. So we had a minister that was able to see the value of the CIF instrument to bring together the actors to define an action plan, to submit to the FIP, to do some transformation. And in the case of the DRC, we are talking of forestry, and Mafalda mentioned the challenges of the forestry environment. How do you mobilize communities that are very diverse in the various parts of the country? How do you come with tools to improve land management? We have the issue of deforestation. How do you bring new techniques? Because very often, trees are used for cooking, as a cooking fuel for women. So bringing new cooking techniques, cooking stoves. So bringing all these elements around an action plan was quite challenging and quite interesting. And I understand that since a lot has happened, and I'm particularly pleased to see how CIF came, exactly as you said, Madam Minister, to help the communities define their needs and participate in the formulation and the implementation of the program. So these are the really elements that I'm taking on that. But to summarize, having a champion, here in Morocco we had Mazen, the chairman has left, as I was going to mention his name, in DRC, in many countries, how we come as partners at MDDs to leverage these resources and amplify it. I think that in the case of Nord, the ratio is almost 1 to 10. And thirdly, how, building on that, we help to scale up and, more important, embed in the national strategies.
Okay, thank you very much. Interesting again, I mean, you're pushing the fact that you need to really start early working with communities. You cannot just come in at a late stage. You really need to involve people from the start. Interesting also with the multi-sector approach, the nexus between food, energy and water, for instance, is absolutely critical. So that's also a perspective, again, that is championed by the CIF and others. So Kate, moving to you, the final word actually in the morning session. Coming from also the UK Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, that's a quite comprehensive background to a certain extent. The role of business we talked a lot about here as well. So some of these outcomes, some of these conclusions from the report, how do they resonate with you and what do you think is particularly important to move forward?
Thank you, and like others, thank you very much. It's a great honour to be here and to be part of this event. My personal journey with the CIF started back in 2012, so I know to many of you I'm still pretty much a newcomer. But I think the UK was one of the countries involved right at the beginning in coming up with the idea of the climate investment funds for exactly the reasons that we're now sat here hearing about, to deliver that change, to deliver that scale, to deliver that ambition across a range of countries, across a range of sectors. And so I'm really proud that the UK was there at the beginning, using our international climate finance to support this. And similarly, that actually we've been a huge advocate of pushing for the evaluation on this to actually understand how do we deliver transformational change? What does that mean? Are we actually being successful? Because in the same way, if you don't involve communities and people at the beginning of this journey, actually, if you don't start evaluating early on, then you can't understand what's working and you can't understand what isn't working. You can't course correct, you can't improve, and you can't actually make the changes that we all need to see at that big macro level as well as at the small individual community and person level as well. So it's great to be here as part of this and to see this evaluation actually come through. You've actually got to be quite ambitious and brave and courageous to undertake evaluation too, because you might hear things that you don't want to hear. You've got to hear about the failures as well as the successes. You've got to hear about actually the things that need to change and the things that you need to do better. But if you aren't doing that evaluation, and this is what I think really resonates for me in everything that we do domestically and internationally, is that you don't start to hear these stories. You don't start to hear the fantastic changes that are being achieved in Zambia, in Niger, in Morocco. And it's by hearing about those stories and learning from them that actually we can share those successes and move onwards. And I just want to sort of also take a step back and say it also resonates, this journey, because actually we're also celebrating a 10-year anniversary in the UK as well. It's 10 years of our Climate Change Act, which brought huge cross-party political support. We put in place carbon budgets, predictability, and it's very much that same message that we're hearing here today about you need the right mechanisms coming together. This isn't just about investment, important as that is, but having the policy foundations, having that predictability, having certainty about building capacity and capability. And that's been important in the UK as much as I know it is in other countries as well. And that has actually then pulled together the opportunity that people have been talking about. This is about prosperity. This is about economic growth. This is about jobs. This is about making our countries better, the lives of our people better, their health better, as well as improving our economies and chances as well. So all of that resonates domestically as well as internationally, and the fact that you need that partnership to do it. And we're seeing results. Domestically, we're thinking big in terms of what we're doing, but actually I think it's what resonates as well is the need here that we're seeing in the CIFs, and Mafalda talked about it, to think big. And I remember back in some CTF meetings in 2013 seeing the proposal for this very plant being projected onto a screen, and it was a computer-generated image. And we were all sat there amazed at the ambition and the scale that was being considered. And it is fantastic now to be sat here actually with it having been built. And it isn't just a computer-generated model anymore. And I think that shows you that you have to think big, but you also have to think long-term. These things take time, and we need to work together in order to achieve those objectives. So I was also asked what surprised me, and these are sort of a couple of personal reflections. There's a lot that doesn't. I'm not surprised, given what I've seen from the CIFs, the changes that have been achieved in lots of countries. But the things that kind of struck me during my time in the CIFs are when I first came in and asked about how do the MDBs work together, and everyone sort of sucked their teeth. Well, the MDBs don't work together. But here they do. In the climate investment funds, they really do. And it staggered me that that was actually groundbreaking, but it was. And I think actually that's been a huge lesson for the MDBs, and taking that and then mainstreaming the lessons that they've learned from the work here, from working with countries, from that country ownership, from the programmatic approach, and embedding it back into what they're doing is wonderful. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. And this is a good thing. I'm constantly surprised by the people, and it's so great that actually on this panel and the video that we saw, we've come back to people, because that is what it's all about. I am constantly surprised by the commitment, the motivation, the knowledge of everyone here, from Mafalda and everyone in the CIF admin unit, to the people who've done this piece of research, to everyone in the countries, the indigenous communities, the people who come to the committee meetings, the civil society observers, who also play a huge part in this, all the way through to the indigenous communities, the technocrats we talked about earlier, and the engineers are all hugely important. And one of my abiding memories of the CIFs is when we were in Jamaica, actually everyone sharing these lessons together. This isn't a competition, this is actually everyone coming together to make these things better. And I remember being in Jamaica and we'd just passed the Armenian SREP country plan, and the celebration and the lesson learning that was already taken place between Armenia, Kenya and Nepal, 3 very different countries, but all excited by each other's success and wanting to learn from each other in order to achieve that ambition. And just to leave with one final thought, because I think it is, again, all about the young people, and the thing for me is about inspiring change amongst us here today, back in our governments, back at the national level, back at the global level as well, but also down to the individual people. So sorry, this is a slightly peculiar story, but right next to the office where I work is a wonderful falafel stall. If you ever come to London, I'll tell you where it is. And the people who run it are from Morocco. And we were chatting one day, and I told them that I worked on climate change. And they said, did you know about the most fantastic ambition that was happening in Morocco? Had I heard about this concentrated solar plant called Noor in Ouarzazate? And so this man in London selling falafels was proud. He was inspired by what was going on in Morocco, and he was telling the world about it. And I was proud to be able to say, actually, yes, I do know about it, and it's a fantastic example, and we're part of it, and I'm going to go and visit it. And I got a free falafel, which was even better. But I think the point is, actually, by inspiring people, by telling these stories, by sharing this success, actually, that's how we can make that transformational change. We start to embed it. We start to know that it can happen. We know that it's difficult, but we can come together and actually really make that difference. Thank you.
I think that is a perfect final point also for the panel. We can make the difference. We can make the change. I still must say, I really like what you said in the beginning. We have to evaluate. We have to make sure we do the right thing. This is sometimes a contrast. You know, we have to act quickly. You know, it's very urgent. But we can't afford to act the wrong way either. We can't afford the wrong investments. So that balance is very, very critical. How do you feel? Oh. First of all, an amazing panel. Give them a warm applause. And I must say, an amazing audience, sitting here since 9 o'clock this morning, remaining in the room completely voluntarily, I know that. So I want to thank you all for that. There will be lunch outside, I think to the right, yes, outside. We will meet for a plenary again at 5:45, but between that, we have all these fantastic breakout sessions, you know, where you have a chance to dwell into the issues we discussed this morning and really ask questions and meet the experts, meet the technocrats, and, you know, all these people that make a difference. And I also received a note to make us even more happy. Please note that all the times remain, so that these sessions will start on time. I won't tell you what time. 1:15. So we will try to keep the agenda, but please grab some food also. And thank you very much for this morning, and see you later this afternoon. Thank you.